Selected 1. Someone went entirely insane because of their preoccupation and interference in your life. They are now paying the ultimate price for posing as workers and leaking intelligence. This individual is sitting in the wreckage of their own creation, watching their demons turn on them because they can no longer give them your energy. They hunted you using family business tools. However, they will not be imprisoned. They're heading to a much worse place. Every curse they cast your way is coming back to haunt you, magnified by heavenly interest, and they're caught in a spiritual reckoning. Seeing someone who stole fire from heaven being scorched by their own stolen flames is analogous to this. Furthermore, striking the match was not even necessary. This began with a person who was given a job they never earned or who inherited it. The business could have been owned by their parent. Perhaps family had ties. They may have enjoyed special treatment because they were the golden kid, but they had access to resources and connections that weren't really theirs. You became their main target, along with company databases, financial resources, staff credentials, and business-related systems that they converted into weapons for their own personal grudges. However, you must first comprehend the magnitude of the challenge you faced before we go on to your victory lap. There was more than one unscrupulous person involved. For years, perhaps even decades, this was a dark fortress that had been in operation throughout generations. It was already sensed by other sensitive employees. A few had mental collapses. Some left abruptly and without warning. Some were taken under false pretenses or gaslighted when they attempted to speak out. That location had such a poisonous spiritual environment that the walls themselves appeared to be whispering warnings. Your stalker was well-versed in how to avoid detection. They were skilled at using corporate benefits for private monitoring. They were skilled at pocketing cash without leaving any trace. They were adept at using business tools to have an impact on people's lives, particularly when those tools were tech-entertainment- or healthcare-related. Access is crucial in any sector because data equals power. This corruption has been taught to them as if it were family business, because it was, in a sense, something old stirred in them when they first saw you. Not regular attraction, not love. Karmic recognition was what this was. It's possible that your spirits have performed this dance for lifetimes. They were still trapped in the same harmful habits, even if you had improved your frequency and learned your lessons. They were not inspired by your brightness. It set them off. They weren't inspired by your accomplishments. It infuriated them. Their whole lives turned into an obsession that took up all of their free time. You must get some insight into the nature of this fixation. It went beyond just desiring you or trying to ruin you. It was a desire to be like you. They saw everything they could never really accomplish in you. People were drawn to you because of your inherent charm, your easy capacity to attract chances. You were nearly untouchable because of your connection to the holy source. In the hopes of wearing it as a costume and feeling whole again, they sought to steal your essence. They began probing your life with those hereditary instruments. Employee access codes to breach your networks, company databases to locate your information, and business resources to pay their monitoring. This is when it becomes very sinister. However, they did more than simply make up profiles. In order to construct accounts that looked authentic, they really stole the identities of actual workers. They made use of the credentials, employee ID numbers, and digital signatures of real persons. These profiles weren't phony. These were identity theft schemes that made use of business infrastructure. This operation's leaked intelligence component was very ruthless. Your information wasn't shared at random. They deliberately disclosed certain information to those they knew would use it against you, such as rivals in your industry, resentful former coworkers, or anyone else they could locate who could have motives to do you damage. By giving them just enough knowledge to make them hazardous to you, without disclosing their own participation, they established a network of unsuspecting accomplices. However, they committed one deadly error. You were simply another target, they thought. They were unaware of your heavenly protection. All of their attacks began to malfunction in ways that were inexplicable. They hired a private investigator using business cash, and the investigator abruptly vanished along with the money. Systems that shouldn't have even seen the phony employee accounts they created inexplicably reported and remove them. In some way, the information they spilled was tainted during transmission, arriving as useless information that nobody could use. You began to see trends that, at the time, didn't make sense. People who shouldn't know certain facts about you. Appearing in locations you've just chosen to visit. Talk that seemed predetermined, as if someone had prepared these individuals on just the right words to set you off. You weren't suspicious. You were noticing how well-planned these assaults were. You had a gut feeling that something planned was taking place. They literally had individuals physically posing as personnel at businesses you visited, even when your rational thinking was unable to grasp how the impersonation extended beyond internet profiles. There was something strange about the individual who said they worked at your gym, the new employee who asked too many personal questions at your favorite coffee shop, that maintenance person who unexpectedly showed up at your building. It wasn't a coincidence. These were concerted efforts at infiltration that employed and deployed these people utilizing the company's resources. Strange things were beginning to occur inside the organization in the meanwhile. Workers were discovering their identities on previously unseen papers. Their access credentials were sometimes used while they weren't even in the building, and their signatures were seen on authorizations they had never granted. Everyone first thought it was a system problem or other technological hiccup. However, as the number of cases increased, a more sinister image started to emerge. A certain employee, let's call them the whistleblower, began recording these irregularities. They discovered that purchases of surveillance equipment had been authorized using their digital signature. They were identified as the person who had requested background checks on individuals they had never heard of. Charges for services they had never approved appeared on their seldom used company credit card. This individual had something that your stalker did not: honesty and bravery. You'll never be as exposed as you once were. You'll never be as innocent as you once were. You've been immunized for life by the burial attempt. You now have antibodies against dishonesty in your spirit. Lies that used to deceive you are now instantly identifiable. Instant alarms are now triggered by manipulation that before would have worked. Those who would have previously been able to get past your spiritual defense system are unable to do so. You've received vaccinations to protect you against the same illnesses that almost killed you. You have now permanently triggered your resurrection power. This applies to all of your future deaths. Resurrection sequences will be triggered automatically when relationships, opportunities, and seasons die. You have turned into a person who is literally unable to remain down, buried, or vanquished. Your default reaction to any effort at burial is now resurrection. Regular has been replaced with premium in your life. Heaven's priority customer status is now yours to use. The head of the queue receives your prayers. Your requirements are taken care of before you even say them. Before you even set foot on your route, it has been cleansed. You have been promoted to a level of spiritual service that is only available to those who have endured what you have. You will use your testimony as a weapon for the rest of your life. Remember your resurrection whenever someone thinks anything is impossible. You'll be able to display your scars to anybody who feels buried and tell them, "I survived." You will too. You've gone through the deepest darkness and come out shining. So you'll be able to provide light whenever darkness appears overpowering. It was never intended for you to travel this route by yourself. There is more to the inner order of obsidian than meets the eye. It is a haven for the awakened, the exiled, and those who have been abandoned for their truth and gaslight for their abilities. We get together live on Zoom once a week. Stories of change from real individuals with genuine faces. The psychic skills of a former CFO were accepted. A healer who overcame ritual torture and discovered their power, and a seer who liberated themselves from religious tyranny. We're joined by dozens of others who have been through precisely what you have. Your spiritual family is this group. I will never abandon you. I will never allow you to experience this revelation by yourself. I would never ignore your pain as if it were a sign of disdain. You are not punished by being banished from a normal world. For us and the family that chooses you back, it was a prelude to this. Join the inner order of obsidians. In the description, there is a link. You are still unaware of the generational ramifications of your survival. The narrative of how you were meant to be buried, but refuse to stay down will be told to unborn children. Your descendants will cash the checks that your resurrection is writing. Doors that won't shut for generations are being opened by your breakthrough. Your ancestry now owns the spiritual area you have gained via this conflict. You will inherit the authority you have acquired. Your acquired immunity will be inherited. Your lineage will carry the favor you have obtained. Your adversary did more than just fail to bury you. Your whole generational line was not buried. The spiritual history books, not the worldly ones that may be altered or destroyed, but the timeless ones that endure forever, are being written with your tale. Among those who survived the unsurvivable, your name is being noted. Your testimony will be preserved as proof that the selected ones followed different laws. Your survival will serve as a model for future selected ones. Your resurrection will be examined as a model. They will use your innovation as evidence of what is feasible. You are now a textbook example of how heaven supports its own, a case study in heavenly protection, and a lesson in spiritual warfare. A significant truth comes to light as you stand here today, months after you were meant to have gone. Your annihilation was never the purpose of the burial. It has to do with your disclosure. It was about bringing out your inner God, your inner strength, your inner unstoppable force, and your inner chosen nature, which was always there, but required pressure to completely emerge. The biggest favor of your life was unintentionally done to you by your adversary. They made you face the truth about who you are. They pushed you into realms of power that you otherwise would not have been able to reach. They gave you access to positions of power that you couldn't have obtained in any other manner. They placed you in an attempt to bury you. They literally launched you in an attempt to end you. Your kingdom is now built on the tomb they measured for you. Your coronation ceremony has been transformed from the burial they had planned. Your proof of legitimacy as one of heaven's chosen ones is the death certificate they attempted to sign. You took use of the funeral rather than only surviving it. You absorbed the attack's strength rather than just enduring it. You are now carrying an unremovable burden as you go. The understanding that you cannot be buried, halted, or destroyed. You've been put to the test by fire and come out on top. You have emerged like a diamond after being compressed by mountains. After being buried by the soil, you have sprung up like a tree with roots that are too deep to ever be removed. The person who planned your funeral is looking on your ascent with a combination of surprise, remorse, and acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that they chose to argue with heaven and lost. Acknowledgement that they attempted to bury a person who was meant to rise. Realize that they really brought out the best in you that they were attempting to suppress. You're still upright. Take a moment to process it. Despite everything that has been hurled at you, every calculation that has been made against you, and every resource that has been used to kill you, you remain upright, sturdy, solid, and unflappable. Even though your legs shook throughout the storm, they remained strong. The strain may have caused your knees to bend, but they never snapped. This position is permanent. It never ends. They stated you would never enter certain rooms, but you've earned the right to stand in them. Be on platforms that others claimed you would never be able to attain. Take on roles they claimed you would never have. Your position is proof of your chosen rank, extraordinary power, and heavenly protection, status that the earth cannot take away. It all depends on your status. It changes the parameters of what is feasible. It questions the data on who endures what. It throws off the stories about who wins. Your position is evidence that certain individuals, regardless of how deeply others attempt to bury them, are just meant to rise. The legend grows with each day you stand. The whistleblower began painstakingly recording everything. Screenshots of falsified paperwork, records of fraudulent charges, and logs of illegal access. When they eventually made their case to top management, it was impossible to brush it off as misunderstanding or paranoia because they had made it so strong. The evidence was indisputable and overwhelming. The ensuing inquiry was the most unusual the organization has ever undertaken. They hired forensic accountants who found years' worth of financial irregularities. Experts in digital security that they hired discovered backdoors and systems that shouldn't have been there. They even hired private detectives who uncovered the network of imposters and phony workers that had been funded by the business. they discovered something astounding. This went beyond simple resource mismanagement or embezzlement. They referred to this as human resource laundering, using the credentials and identities of actual persons to do crimes for which they may be held accountable. Unknowingly, innocent workers have been complicit in a vast monitoring and harassing campaign. The consequences for the law were disastrous. Promote this video so that additional people who are selected like you may discover it if its message resonates with you. The relatives of your stalker or the board members that shielded them had to make a very bad decision. The group would be annihilated if this became public knowledge. Criminal investigations into identity theft, lawsuits from violated workers, and regulatory fines that would bankrupt them are all possible. But more significantly, innocent persons who were unwittingly involved may be charged with crimes they did not commit. There would be incalculable collateral harm. So they came to an agreement. They would remove your stalker in silence. Just a quick layoff and a non-disclosure agreement. No public exposure, no prosecution. With lavish severance benefits and great recommendations, the innocent workers who had been most corrupted would be fired, supposedly as a result of restructuring. The company would covertly put additional security measures in place and hope that the harm might be limited. However, business remedies cannot stop spiritual corruption. Something changed in the spiritual world the instant your stalker was unable to use their stolen ability. Don't forget that they have been working against you with more than just physical means. They have been using business infrastructure as a conduit for spiritual warfare. The servers of the company had become conduits for curses. Databases of employees have evolved into instruments of active vampires. The structure itself had turned into a gateway for evil forces. All of that black energy suddenly turned around. All of the curses they had hurled via the company's channels came back to haunt them. All of the demons they had nourished with stolen data were angry and ravenous. All of their attempts to use employee credentials to cast spells failed miserably. Before they were trapped in their own trap, they were the spider in the heart of the web. And spiritual razor wire was used to make the silk. They experienced the bodily signs right away. Unexpected, unexplained sicknesses that precisely mirrored what they had attempted to bring into your life. They were now experiencing such severe panic attacks that they were unable to leave their home if they had attempted to cause you distress. Their own accounts were inexplicably stopped or depleted if they had attempted to give you financial difficulties. They would have been totally rejected by everyone they believed they could rely on if they had attempted to socially isolate you. However, the spiritual and mental problems were considerably worse. In their peripheral vision, they began to see the faces of everyone they had ever harmed. Having nightmares in which they felt every bit of the suffering they had inflicted from the victim's point of view, and hearing accusatory voices that may have been their conscience or something more supernatural. They were the defendant, the prosecutor, and the condemned all at once in their own mental courtroom. The spiritual pollution started to show up in the building where all of this occurred. Workers complained of chilly patches that weren't related to HVAC problems. Electronics would break down in predictable, almost logical ways. Shadows moving in ways that defied physics would be captured by security cameras. The sensitive staff members were no longer able to tolerate their presence. In order to escape the suffocating environment, even the doubters began taking sick days. On the contrary, you began to undergo spectacular changes. Every mechanism they had used to harm you started to operate in your favor. Suddenly, the networks they had snuck into to propagate false information about you began endorsing your work. Unexpected chances started to present themselves via the banking companies they had used to monitor your assets. The infrastructure that they had used as a weapon against you was turned into a conduit for good fortune. During this time, your energy signature underwent a significant transformation. You changed from being a target and a target of tracking to being in a whole new dimensional frequency. It was transcendence, not concealing, that made you invisible to their observation. You were functioning at a vibrational level that they were no longer able to reach. It was similar to using a fishing net to attempt to capture light. Your surroundings become even more protected than before. You were aware that you were actually inaccessible to those with bad motives. They They get sidetracked, suddenly diverted, or just forget what they were about to do. You would have malfunctioning technology that may be exploited against you. You would lose or corrupt documents that may hurt you. Negative intents would find you electromagnetically repelling. More significantly, however, your spiritual abilities were fully activated. Your natural ability to read people's genuine motives became almost psychic. Your trusted intuition turned into prophetic insight. Your sense of protection turned into a shield that was obvious to onlookers. You were no longer just getting by. In ways that eluded easy explanation, you were flourishing. Meanwhile, the company was losing resources and talent. The decent workers, the honest ones, saw that something was really off and began to quit. Those who had been aware of or involved in the covert activities, the corrupt ones, began to turn on one another. Trust vanished entirely. Everyone viewed everyone other with suspicion. Productivity stopped because the business culture got so poisonous. A few of the laid-off workers began comparing their notes. They came to the realization that they had all fallen prey to identity theft in their own place of employment. They started to realize that they had been used as sacrificed pawns in a personal grudge. Some of them began their own investigations and discovered levels of corruption that the official probe had overlooked. After losing all authority and protection, your stalker made a valiant effort to re-establish their business on their own without institutional support. Your testimony grows every day that you breathe. The fact that you prosper every day is further proof that the selected ones follow distinct rules. Months ago, you were meant to be buried and gone. Rather, you are now irrevocable evidence that Earth's plots cannot bury heaven's children forever. Selected one. You were sized for a grave that was too small to accommodate you. A funeral was scheduled, however it was canceled. Signed for a conclusion that turned into a start, because they don't realize that certain individuals are intended to be everlasting, selected to be unstoppable, or assigned to be intolerable. Someone is surprised that you're still here. You're still upright, and that position is going to serve as the cornerstone upon which others will stand. Someone's hope for survival is about to become yours. Someone is going to use your resurrection as evidence that death isn't final. Generations to come will hear your tale as proof that those who are chosen do not perish according to the plans of the adversary. The funeral didn't work out. There is no one in the grave. You remain here, and everything changes just by being here, standing here, and flourishing here. Not just for you, but also for all the other selected individuals who are now being buried and are unsure of their prognosis. Their pledge to do so is your standing.